He looks just like your son who passed away." Those are the only words she managed to whisper when her eyes met the boy's. A boy covered in dirt, wearing torn shoes, wandering the streets like a ghost no one sees. But what neither she nor her billionaire boyfriend knew was that this child was about to unravel a story far more twisted, painful, and life-changing than any of them were prepared for. If you think this is just about a poor boy returning a lost wallet, you're not even close. This story will challenge everything you believe about fate, about family, and about the lies people hide beneath luxury. So if you're new here, subscribe to the channel right now, because we bring stories that make you feel, that make you question everything, and that might just change how you see the world. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching this from? I love seeing how far these stories travel. The car moved like a shadow, smooth and dark, its engine barely audible. City lights had faded several blocks ago, replaced by silence and cracked sidewalks. Inside the tinted vehicle, a man drove in silence. Next to him, a woman stared out the window, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her scarf. They weren't supposed to be there. He'd taken a wrong turn, or so he claimed. But she knew he liked coming here sometimes, just to remember how far he'd come, whatever that meant. The car slowed. On the sidewalk, curled near a metal trash bin, was a boy, no more than 10, barefoot, arms crossed over his chest. His ribs showed through a filthy shirt 2 sizes too small. His eyes were open, but empty, like he wasn't really there. She turned to him. "Stop the car," she said softly. He looked at her, confused. "Why? Just stop it." The tires crunched against gravel as the vehicle pulled to a slow halt. The woman stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. She took a few steps toward the child, then froze. She covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled in her eyes before she even knew why. "He looks just like," she whispered, but she didn't finish the sentence. The man stepped out too, following her gaze. He squinted at the boy. "No, he doesn't," he muttered. "It's just the hair." "No," she replied. "It's the eyes." A heavy silence followed. The child hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't said a word. The boy woke up as the sun started to rise. A dog barked in the distance. He rubbed his eyes and stood slowly, stretching his back like it hurt. Then, something caught his attention. A sleek black wallet. Right there, near the sidewalk, half hidden under a newspaper. He looked around. Nobody. He picked it up. Inside were credit cards, a driver's license, a thick wad of cash, and an expensive business card with raised golden letters. He could run. He could buy food. He could finally sleep in a bed. But instead, he closed the wallet carefully, zipped it inside his hoodie, and started walking. Not away, but toward the nearest police station. Except something stopped him. He turned the card over. There was an address. The man's address. He stared at it for a long time, then put the card back in a wallet and began his search. 2 hours earlier, the man from the car walked alone, deliberately, as his girlfriend waited in the car. In his hand, his wallet. He slowed as he passed the sleeping boy, then let it fall. Clean, precise, like a magician's sleight of hand. He didn't look back. "Let's see what kind of kid he really is," he said under his breath. He didn't believe in kindness. He believed in reactions. People showed their true selves when no one was watching. And he needed proof. Proof that the world was still as selfish as he remembered. Scene 4. Back to present. The boy tries to return the wallet. 2 days passed. 3. He asked around. Showed the photo from the license. Got chased off more than once. Slept under bridges. Got caught in the rain. But he kept the wallet safe. Dry. Until, finally, he saw him again, getting into a car outside a high-rise building. The boy ran. "Sir! Sir!" The man turned, mildly annoyed. Then shocked. "You again?" The boy held out the wallet with both hands, head down. "I think this is yours." The man took it slowly, flipping it open. Everything was there. Every bill, every card, untouched. He looked at the boy, but before he could say a word, the woman stepped out of the car and froze. Her lips trembled. Her knees gave slightly. She whispered, "He looks just like your son." The man's expression shattered for a moment, just a flicker. "Get in the car," he told the boy. The boy blinked, unsure if he heard right. "Now," the man insisted. And just like that, The doors to another life cracked open. The boy sat in the back seat, stiff, unsure if he should touch anything. The car smelled like leather and expensive cologne, a world away from the scent of garbage and wet cardboard he was used to. His fingers fidgeted with the frayed edge of his hoodie. He didn't speak. The man drove in silence. The woman, now sitting in the front passenger seat, kept glancing at him through the mirror. Her eyes were red. She hadn't said another word since she saw him, but her mind was spinning. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was almost haunting. The shape of his nose, the way he bit his lower lip when nervous, the same way her son used to. She wanted to ask his name, but her voice kept getting caught in her throat. They pulled up to a massive gate. The boy's eyes widened. He'd never seen a house like that. Tall columns, a fountain, glass walls reflecting the sky like mirrors. When the car stopped, the driver opened the door for him. He hesitated. The woman turned around, finally breaking her silence. "You're safe here," she said softly. He nodded, stepping out. Inside the house, marble floors echoed beneath his tiny steps. Everything looked fragile, white, clean, too clean. He felt like even breathing wrong would break something. A maid walked by and froze when she saw him. The man raised a hand. "It's fine," he said. "Prepare something for him to eat. And find some clothes. He can't walk around like that." The boy looked down at himself. He hadn't even realized how dirty he was until now. He was led to a bathroom bigger than the room he used to sleep in behind a bakery. Warm water filled the tub. A towel soft as clouds was waiting. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at the mirror. His own reflection looked like a stranger. After the bath, dressed in clean clothes that still hung loose on his thin frame, he was brought to a dining room with a table long enough to fit 20 people. But only the three of them sat there. The woman pushed a plate toward him gently. "Eat as much as you want." He didn't wait. He was starving, but he tried to chew slowly, remembering how his mother once told him to have manners, even if no one's watching. Halfway through the meal, the man finally spoke. "What's your name?" The boy looked up, nervous. "Gabriel," he said. The woman's fork slipped from her hand. It clattered against the plate, echoing in the silence. Her eyes welled with tears instantly. The man frowned. "Gabriel?" he asked again, more seriously now. The boy nodded, unsure why they were so affected. The woman stood up and left the table without a word. The man followed her with his eyes, then turned back to the boy. "Where are your parents?" Gabriel hesitated. "My mom, she got sick. Then she stopped waking up. I waited for her to wake up for 3 days. I was scared they would take me away, so I ran." The man's jaw clenched. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he stood. "You'll stay here tonight." Gabriel looked up, eyes wide. "Really?" The man nodded. "There's a guest room upstairs. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." Gabriel smiled, the first real smile in days. He didn't know that smile would be the first crack in a chain of secrets buried years ago, and that by morning, everything would already start to unravel. Gabriel woke up to the sound of birds outside the window. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. The bed was so soft it felt like floating. The sheets smelled like flowers. Light poured in through tall windows, filtered by thin white curtains. He sat up slowly, taking in the room. A bookshelf full of colorful spines. A plush rug beneath his feet. A wardrobe with glass doors. None of it seemed real. He closed his eyes, half expecting to open them and find himself back in the alley. But he didn't. He stepped out of bed carefully, walked to the door, and crept down the stairs as quietly as possible, afraid to touch anything, afraid to break the silence. In the kitchen, the woman sat at the table, a cup of tea in her hands, her gaze lost somewhere beyond the window. She noticed him and smiled, softly, weakly, but her eyes still carried that sadness. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. Gabriel nodded shyly. "There's food on the table. You can eat whatever you want." He glanced at the spread. Fresh bread, sliced fruit, warm milk, even cake. It looked like something out of a magazine. He took a seat slowly, like he didn't fully believe it was meant for him. She watched him in silence. Every little gesture, the way he held his cup with both hands, the slight tremble when he reached for the butter, the way he kept looking around, like expecting someone to tell him to leave. It was just like before. Then the man walked in, sharp suit, crisp tie, not a single wrinkle out of place. He barely looked at Gabriel before speaking. "I have to go to the office. I'll deal with the paperwork today. Maybe you can stay here for now, if that's necessary." The woman turned to him. "You know what I saw yesterday? We're not doing this now," he said firmly. "Coincidence doesn't mean destiny." She wanted to argue, to scream that it wasn't just coincidence, but instead, she turned her gaze back to Gabriel, still eating quietly at the table, completely unaware that he was the center of a silent storm. Hours passed. Gabriel was given books, crayons, puzzles. One of the house staff gently offered to help him with schoolwork. He looked surprised. "Do you know how to read?" she asked kindly. He hesitated, then nodded. "My mom taught me, but I stopped when she didn't wake up anymore." Later that afternoon, the woman came to him with a box. "These were my son's toys," she said quietly. "You can play with them if you want to." Gabriel opened the box, eyes wide in awe. Tiny cars, action figures, a teddy bear with one stitched ear. He held the bear in his hands, gently. "He had a teddy just like this," he said without thinking. She froze. "How do you know that?" Gabriel looked up at her, confused. I don't know. I just felt it." She slowly knelt in front of him, tears slipping down her face. "You're the same age you would be now," she whispered. "Same name, same way of looking at me." Gabriel stayed perfectly still. "He died in a car accident," she continued, her voice cracking. "But they never found the body. The river was too deep. The police said there was no way anyone could survive. But what if they were wrong?" Her eyes were locked on his, like she was seeing a miracle unfold in front of her. But Gabriel wasn't feeling like a miracle. He was scared. He didn't understand what was happening. But something inside him shifted. Something long buried started to stir. Something that didn't belong to a street kid, but to someone else entirely. That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep. He lay in the soft bed, staring at the ceiling, his arms wrapped tightly around the teddy bear with the stitched ear. Every creak in the house made him flinch. Every shadow felt too still, too quiet. He kept hearing her words echo in his mind. "You're the same age you would be now. Same name." They never found the body. He didn't know what any of it meant, but made something inside him ache. Memories he couldn't place began to flicker behind his eyelids. A red balloon, a song playing on a car radio. Water, cold, rushing water. Screams. Then darkness. He sat up in bed, heart racing. Downstairs, the woman stood by a photo album. The pages were worn from years of opening and closing, flipping through grief. Her fingers trembled as she turned to a page filled with pictures of small boy. Big brown eyes, crooked smile, the exact same age Gabriel was now. Same eyes, same smile. She stared at the photos for a long time before pulling one out and slipping into her pocket. The man came in, loosening his tie, exhausted. "You're not sleeping?" he asked. "I can't," she said, not looking up. "I looked through the album." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I told you, don't do this to yourself." "You saw him," she whispered. "He didn't just return the wallet. He searched for us for days." "Who does that?" "He has your integrity. He has my smile." "That doesn't prove anything." "I'm not trying to prove anything. I feel it. Every time I look at him, I feel in my bones." The man didn't answer. He walked to the window and stared out into the night. "He's been missing for 6 years, he said. "You buried him." "We both did." "No," she said softly. "We buried a casket, but we never saw a body." Silence again. From the staircase, Gabriel watched them quietly. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but he couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. 6 years? He was 10 now. Had he lived another life before the streets? The next morning, the man drove Gabriel into the city without saying where they were going. The boy sat in the back seat, anxious, still clutching the photo the woman had slipped him when the man wasn't looking. It was a photo of a boy standing in front of a swing set, holding a red balloon. Gabriel didn't remember it being taken, but something about the swing set felt familiar. The man pulled up outside a government building, gray, cold, intimidating. "I need to know who you really are," he said. Inside, they ran fingerprints. Gabriel's hands shook as the technician gently pressed them onto the scanner. The man stood behind him, arms crossed, face unreadable. Minutes passed. Then an error screen popped up. The woman at the desk frowned. "This can't be right." "What is it?" the man asked. She looked at the file again, then back at the computer. "There's a match, but it's sealed." "Sealed?" "It says the identity is protected under court order." The man stepped back. "What do you mean protected?" "I mean, this child's identity is hidden by legal request. Only a judge can grant access to the file." Gabriel looked up at the man, confused. "Does that mean I'm someone?" The man looked down at him, his mask of control starting to crack. It did mean something, and he wasn't ready for what that something might be. They left the building in silence, the tension inside the car heavier than the air itself. Gabriel sat curled in the back seat, eyes fixed on the window, watching the world rush by. But his reflection in the glass startled him. For a moment, he didn't recognize his own face. The man drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw clenched, knuckles white. A sealed identity? Protected by court order? He had access to everything. Business files, bank accounts, even government contracts. But he'd never come across a child whose name had been locked away like that. Unless he didn't want to think about it. Back at the house, the woman was waiting by the door. She rushed out the moment the car pulled in, not even letting the engine cool. "Well?" she asked. The man stepped out, hesitated, then shook his head. "There's a match, but the records are sealed." Her heart skipped. Sealed? Why would a child's file be sealed? He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty. Not anger, not control, but fear. That night, Gabriel was quiet at dinner. The woman tried to get him to eat more, but he only picked at the food. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked. He nodded without looking up, but inside he was drowning, in memories that weren't his. Or maybe they were. Flashes of cold water, the sound of glass shattering, someone calling his name. His real name? He wasn't sure anymore. Later, he crept downstairs while the adults argued in the study, their voices muffled but intense. He found his way back to the living room, where the photo album still lay open. He sat on the floor and flipped through it page by page. One picture stopped him cold. A birthday party, a backyard, and in the background, the swing set. He stood abruptly, his breathing shallow. He had seen that swing set before, not just in dreams, in real life. Suddenly, the woman stepped into the room. He froze. She looked at the photo in his hands, then knelt beside him. "You remember it, don't you?" Gabriel didn't speak. He didn't have to. His eyes were full of something she hadn't seen before. Recognition. She reached for his hand. "When you were a baby," she whispered, "you used to fall asleep with your thumb in your mouth, curled up like a little caterpillar. And you had a freckle just above your left hip. I used to call it your lucky spot." Gabriel's breathing grew quicker. She looked at him, hesitating. "Can I check?" He nodded, slowly. She gently lifted the hem of his shirt. And there it was. The freckle. Same size. Same place. Her hand flew to her mouth, and a sob escaped her throat. It was him. It was him. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't just grieving. She pulled him into her arms and held him like she had been holding her breath for 6 years. But in the hallway, the man stood, watching, expressionless, frozen, and yet inside him, something shattered like glass. Because he knew something she didn't, something that made this impossible. And it had nothing to do with accidents or rivers. It had to do with the lie he buried 6 years ago, a lie that had just come back wearing the face of his dead son. He waited until she was asleep. The boy had been tucked in, his face still red from the tears and confusion. The woman hadn't stopped holding him until his breathing slowed into a child's rhythm. She'd kissed his forehead and whispered lullabies she hadn't dared to sing in years. But now the house was quiet again. Too quiet. The man stood in his private study, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. His other hand trembled as he stared at a locked drawer in the cabinet across the room. He hadn't opened it in 6 years. Not once. He didn't want to, because inside that drawer was the truth. He placed the glass down and knelt before it. The old key, cold, metallic, heavy with memory, fit perfectly. The lock clicked. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, wrapped in a faded manila envelope, were the police reports, photos, a DNA test, court papers, and a letter he never showed her. He took a breath and began reading again. It was all there. The truth about the crash, about what he saw that day, about what he did afterward. He was never supposed to lie. But grief makes cowards of strong men. He closed the folder, locked the drawer again, and stared at the wall. If that boy was who she believed he was, then the entire narrative they built of closure, of mourning, was a fabrication. And worse, he had helped build it. Back upstairs, Gabriel tossed in his sleep. Dreams turned to nightmares. He saw the water again. The seatbelt wouldn't unbuckle. The glass fogging. A woman screaming. Then silence. And hands. Hands pulling him up. Not hers. Someone else. A stranger's. The next morning, the woman was already planning for his life. "I'll call the school," she said. "We can get him tested, catch him up. He's smart. You can tell. He just needs support." The man nodded quietly, drinking his coffee. She placed a hand on his arm. "You believe me now, don't you?" He hesitated, then forced a smile. "If there's even a chance he's ours, I'll do whatever it takes." She smiled, tears pooling again. But he wasn't telling her everything. He couldn't. Not yet. Later that afternoon, Gabriel sat in the backyard staring at the swing set. He wasn't sure how he knew it, but he did. The grooves in the wood, the sound it made when it swayed, the creaking chains. It was as if his body remembered before his mind did. The woman stepped outside, watching him from the patio. "You used to swing for hours," she said. "Even after sunset. We had to drag you inside." Gabriel looked at her. "Why did I leave?" he asked softly. She froze. "What do you mean? If I was your son, why did I end up on the street?" She crouched beside him. "Because we thought you were gone," she whispered. "We thought you were dead." Gabriel stared at the ground. "But I wasn't." She wrapped her arms around him again. "No, you weren't." Neither of them noticed the man watching from the upstairs window, his face pale, eyes locked on the scene below. His mind whispered the words he hadn't said out loud in 6 years. He wasn't supposed to survive. And now that he had, everything was at risk. The next day began like any other. Sunlight filtered through the vast windows. The house was calm, full of a gentle buzz of maids cleaning and dishes clinking in the kitchen. Gabriel was given new clothes, soft, bright, warm. Clothes that didn't smell like mildew or fear. The woman braided his hair, humming a tune she hadn't sung since before the accident. Her face was glowing, reborn. Her eyes no longer carried the weight of a mother in mourning, but the flicker of something rare, a hope. Gabriel responded with small smiles, quiet nods. He liked her. She was gentle. She listened. She smelled like roses and chamomile. But something still didn't sit right. Not with him. Not with the man pacing in his office, phone pressed tightly to his ear. "I need everything you can dig up," the man hissed. "Hospital records, adoption logs, foster files, anything that mentions a boy named Gabriel. Age 10, possibly abandoned around 6 years ago." There was a pause on the other end. The man's jaw tightened. "No, don't go through official channels. I want this quiet, discreet. No paperwork, no alerts." He hung up and ran a hand down his face. He couldn't let her find out what he did. She thought Gabriel had vanished into the river that night. But he hadn't. The man had seen the boy, alive, dragged from the wreckage by a stranger in the chaos. And instead of calling for help, he turned his back. Because he had secrets. Because his life couldn't afford the scandal that came with the truth. Back then, he told himself it was mercy, that the boy would be better off away from them, that she wouldn't survive knowing what really happened that night. But now that lie had a name and a heartbeat, and he was sleeping under their roof. He walked into the hallway and found Gabriel playing with building blocks on the floor. He watched him silently. The boy was focused, stacking each piece carefully, as if building something important. "You like puzzles?" the man asked. Gabriel looked up. "They help me think," he said simply. The man crouched beside him. "Do you remember anything before the street?" Gabriel hesitated. Just flashes. A car, a river, screaming, a teddy bear. The man's heart dropped. Gabriel continued, his voice soft. "Sometimes, I think I had another name." The man forced a chuckle. "Well, Gabriel is a strong name." The boy smiled. "Someone told me once it meant God is my strength." He nodded. "It does." But as the boy returned to his blocks, the man's smile faded. Because what the boy didn't know was that someone had given him that name. And it hadn't been his mother, nor his father. It had been a stranger, one who found him unconscious on a riverbank in the dead of night and handed him off to a shelter hours away. No questions asked. And now that stranger had returned, because across the city, in a small, dimly lit apartment, a man opened an old file. Inside it was a photo of a boy, dirty, scared, holding a teddy bear with a stitched ear. Below it, a handwritten note. No ID. Named himself Gabriel. Says he had a mom. Never asks for a dad. The man lit a cigarette, narrowed his eyes, and picked up the phone, because someone out there had found the boy again. And it wasn't by accident. The man who held the file hadn't heard that name, Gabriel, in years. He sat in a dark apartment that smelled of old paper and regret, surrounded by boxes of forgotten faces. He used to work at the shelter, the kind that patched holes with duct tape and ran on volunteers who didn't last 2 weeks. He'd seen every kind of lost soul walk through those doors. But there was something about the boy, something different. He was silent, even when fed, polite, even when terrified, and he never once cried for a father. That always bothered him. Back then, the man made a call, one that went unanswered. He tucked the child into the system and moved on. But now someone was poking around. Someone rich enough, quiet enough, and desperate enough to try hiding a sealed identity. That meant the boy wasn't just a ghost anymore. He was a ticking time bomb. Back at the mansion, the woman brought out a dusty box from the attic, keepsakes, drawings, old school photos. Gabriel sat beside her on the floor, holding a piece of paper with a crayon scribble of a house and a red balloon. "I drew this," he asked. She smiled through tears. "Your first drawing. You said it was our house, and that the red balloon was how you'd fly away when you got big." He stared at it, expression tight. "I don't want to fly away anymore." She looked at him, surprised. "I think I already did. I flew away. A long time ago." Her hands trembled. Do you want to remember?" Gabriel hesitated. Then, quietly, "Only if it won't hurt." She pulled him close. Sometimes remembering hurts, but forgetting hurts more. That night, the man stood alone on the balcony, watching the boy play in the garden below. The soft laughter, the way he kicked the ball against the stone path. It echoed like a ghost from the past. She believed in miracles. He believed in consequences. And the knock on the door that evening sounded like both. He opened it to find the shelter worker standing there, older now, worn, holding the same file he had opened earlier. "I figured you'd come looking," the man said, pushing past him without invitation. "You're not supposed to be here," the billionaire hissed. "And that boy's not supposed to be yours," the worker replied, cold. "But here we are." The woman entered the room, surprised. "Who's this?" The shelter worker smiled bitterly. "You must be the grieving mother." The billionaire stepped between them. "She doesn't know anything. Leave her out of this." But she was already staring at the file in the man's hand. "What is that?" she asked. The worker dropped it on the table. "Proof," he said, "of how your husband made a child disappear." She blinked, disoriented. "What are you talking about?" The billionaire's face turned pale. The worker opened the folder. "There was no accident. Not like he told you. Your son didn't vanish. He was left. Found by a stranger, dumped into the system, given a new name, new life. Also, he wouldn't come back." Silence struck the room like thunder. She turned to her husband, trembling. "Tell me he's lying." But he couldn't. He didn't even try. Gabriel stood in the hallway, watching from the shadows. His breath caught in his throat. And just like that, the family he thought he'd found, shattered all over again. The room was silent, but not the calm kind. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a scream, heavy and suffocating. The kind of silence that feels like falling through the floor without ever hitting the ground. The woman stared at her husband, eyes glassy, lips trembling. "You left him?" she whispered. He opened his mouth. No words came out, just air. "You knew he was alive, and you left him in the street like garbage?" "It wasn't like that," he finally muttered, weak cracking. "Then how is it?" she asked, stepping toward him, her voice rising. "How do you explain looking into your son's eyes and walking away?" Gabriel watched from the hallway, frozen. His legs felt like stone, his heart a drum out of rhythm. The shelter worker remained by the table, arms crossed. "I always wondered why no one came for him," he said quietly. The kid barely spoke, but you could tell he came from somewhere decent. He was too polite to be feral, too careful to be raised by the street. The billionaire clenched his fists. "You don't understand what I was protecting." She scoffed. "Protecting who exactly?" "Yourself." "You," he shouted, finally losing control. "I was protecting you. You were falling apart. You couldn't even function. If I told you he was alive, injured, lost, you would have destroyed yourself looking for him." "I had the right to destroy myself," she screamed. "He was my son, not a project, not a public image. My child." Gabriel flinched. The man turned to him now, finally facing what he never wanted to confront. "I didn't know where they took you," he said, desperate. "The man who pulled you out, he vanished. No name, no trace. I searched for months, but everything hit a wall. I told myself, if fate wanted us apart, I'd let it. I didn't think you'd survive out there." The boy stared back, silent, unmoving. "You gave up," the woman said, tears streaking her face. "And then you buried him. Held my hand at the fake funeral. Watched me cry myself to sleep, all while knowing." She shook her head, backing away like she couldn't stand to be near him. "You're a monster." He looked down, defeated. Gabriel stepped into the room, his voice small but sharp as a blade. "Why didn't you come back for me?" The man lifted his gaze. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, voice hollow. "I thought maybe you'd be safer without me." Gabriel didn't respond. He just walked to the woman and held her hand. And in that moment, something shifted in the air. A silent choice was made. Whatever this man had been to them, he wasn't anymore. Later that night, she packed a small suitcase. Not for her, for Gabriel. They would stay in a hotel until she could figure out what came next. The man stood in the doorway, eyes glassy. "I never meant to lose everything," he whispered. "You didn't lose everything," she said, steady now. "You gave it away." Gabriel looked at the house one last time before the door closed. It no longer felt like a mansion. It felt like a mausoleum, a place where truth was buried beneath marble and silence. And now it was no longer home. The hotel room was small. No chandeliers, no marble floors, no fountains humming in the distance. But it was warm, safe, real. Gabriel sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping through the same photo album she had brought with them. The only piece of the past she didn't want to leave behind. She watched him from the little armchair near the window, arms wrapped around herself. He was sleeping again in her life, but nothing felt the same. The boy had come back, but she hadn't. Not fully. Not yet. She still felt like a ghost in her own body, floating between guilt, rage, and the terrible ache of all those lost years. She had missed everything. His birthdays, his first lost tooth, his fears, his growth. All because the man she loved thought she couldn't handle the truth. But she was still here. And this time, she'd fight for him. Gabriel looked up suddenly. "Will I have to go back?" he asked. She stood and sat beside him. "No," she said softly. "Not if I can help it. What if he tries to take me?" Her hands clenched. "He won't." Gabriel hesitated. "I don't want to be in the street again." "You won't be," she promised, brushing his hair back gently. Never again. That same night, she made calls. To lawyers. To friends she hadn't spoken to in years. To the police. She wanted to make sure there was no loophole, no secret custody clause, no hidden document that could be used against her. But there was a problem. Her husband still had legal guardianship. Technically, Gabriel was missing and had now returned to his official home. The fact that she'd taken him from that home, without legal transfer, was murky ground. "I can fight this," her lawyer said, "but it'll be dirty and public. Are you ready for that?" She looked at her reflection in the hotel mirror. She saw the pain, the exhaustion, the years she could never get back. But she also saw something else. Fire. "I'm ready." The next morning, the media got the first whiff of the scandal. Headlines flashed across news sites and gossip blogs. Millionaire couple's dead son found alive, and the father knew? Stolen child, stolen years. The secret that could destroy a fortune. The boy in the river, a mother's miracle or a father's cover-up. Reporters swarmed the mansion gates. He refused to speak. Behind those doors, the man sat alone, watching the empire he built become fuel for a public fire. He thought he could bury one decision, but now it was digging up everything. A subpoena arrived that afternoon. A judge had granted an emergency hearing. She and Gabriel would finally have their day in court. That night, as she tucked him in, Gabriel looked up at her with eyes that had seen far too much for a boy's age. "Even if the judge says I have to go back," he whispered, "will you still remember me?" She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "I didn't forget you when I thought you were dead," she whispered. "Why would I ever forget you now that I've found you again?" He nodded, holding onto her hand. "I'll be brave." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You already are." The courtroom wasn't grand. No golden chandeliers, no carved mahogany, just white walls, stiff chairs, and the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Not from temperature, but from the eyes watching you. Reporters were banned from entering, but whispers still found their way through cracks in the courthouse walls. The judge was known for her composure. Sharp, efficient, unforgiving when it came to lies. She sat high above the chaos, glasses low on her nose, pen always tapping against the desk. Her eyes never blinked longer than necessary. On one side sat the mother, tired yes but upright. Her fingers gripped Gabriel's hand like an anchor. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, nothing to hide behind. Only truth, raw and steady. On the other side, the father, suit crisp, tie perfect, face unreadable. To anyone else, he looked composed, but his hands trembled beneath the table. He wasn't just fighting for custody. He was fighting to keep his secrets buried. The lawyer began. "Your Honor, what we have here is a situation of deliberate deception. A man who watched his own son disappear and made no attempt to recover him. Worse, he misled the mother, allowing her to grieve a child who was very much alive." Objections came fast. "That's speculation," the father's lawyer snapped. "Not speculation," the mother's attorney replied. "Evidence." He placed documents on the judge's desk. Shelter records, emergency logs, a time-stamped report of a child being found near a river, unconscious 6 years ago, with the name Gabriel. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "The shelter worker," the lawyer answered. "Same one who showed up at the family home days ago. He's here to testify." The judge nodded slowly, expression unreadable. "Let's hear him." The man stepped forward, nervous but solid. He told everything. The night he found Gabriel, the confusion, the lack of ID, the child's refusal to speak, how he tried calling for help, one number in particular that never picked up. Then the mother spoke. Her voice cracked but never broke. "He was gone. That's all I knew. My husband told me the river took him, that no body was found, that I had to let go." She looked at the judge. "But how do you let go of something your soul still feels?" Silence filled the room. Then Gabriel stood. He hadn't been asked to speak, but the judge didn't stop him. He walked to the center, small and fragile in a room built for adults. "My mom didn't forget me," he said, loud enough to echo. "She found me even when nobody told her to look." But he turned to the man. He saw me and walked away. The judge leaned forward. "You remember that?" Gabriel hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't at first, but I do now." I remember his eyes. The father's lawyer stood abruptly. "This is trauma-induced memory. It can't be trusted." The judge raised a hand. "I've seen enough." She turned to Gabriel. "You're a brave boy, braver than most adults I've met." Then she looked at the parents. "This boy's legal guardianship is now transferred fully and solely to his mother. Effective immediately." The woman gasped, hand over her mouth. The father sat back as if punched. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. Court was dismissed. Outside, the air was bright and cold. The woman crouched beside Gabriel, holding his face in her hands. "It's over," she whispered. But Gabriel shook his head gently. "It's not over." She froze. He looked into the crowd of people leaving the courthouse and saw him, the stranger who saved him that night, standing at a distance, watching, not moving, not speaking. And then he turned and vanished into the city. That night, the hotel room was quiet again. Not the heavy silence from before, not the silence of grief or secrets, but the kind that comes after a storm, where you finally hear your own heartbeat again. Gabriel was asleep, his cheek pressed into the pillow, clutching the teddy bear like it was stitched with the memories he wasn't ready to let go of. The woman watched him, her heart a strange mixture of peace and sadness. She had him back, but the past still hovered like a shadow at the edge of the room. She couldn't stop thinking about the man outside the courthouse. The one Gabriel saw, the one she didn't. She remembered the shelter worker's words. He was found by a stranger. No name, no trace. But someone had found him that night, and that someone had left him alive. Why? Why disappear? Why never come forward? The next morning, as the sun stretched across the city, she decided to find out. She returned to the shelter. The building looked more worn than she remembered. Cracks in the walls, a flickering sign out front, but the man was still there. Same tired face, same cautious eyes. "I need your help," she said. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. "I never forgot him," he said, voice low. There was something about the way he looked at the world, like he knew it was broken, but still wanted to fix it. She swallowed hard. "Who brought him in?" The man sighed. "I was hoping you wouldn't ask that." "Why?" "Because he didn't give a name, didn't fill out paperwork, didn't speak much, but he left something. I never told anyone." He disappeared into a back room and returned with a small metal box. Inside it was a folded note. Old, yellowed, handwritten. She opened it carefully. "He's not mine, but someone out there will love him better than I ever could." No signature, no name, but on the back of the note, a fingerprint in dry blood. The shelter worker had kept it all these years. "Always thought," he said, "maybe one day someone would come asking, and I'd know when it was the right person." She took the note, her hands shaking. Back at the hotel, she showed it to Gabriel. His eyes widened the moment he saw it. "I know this handwriting." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've seen it before. In a dream. I think it was a letter. In a box. With a necklace." He paused. A red string tied around it. The woman nearly dropped the paper. She had that box. It had been in her attic for years. She ran to the suitcase and rummaged through the things she'd brought from home. Old photos, documents, then finally a small blue box. Inside, a letter, a necklace, a red string, and the handwriting identical. She opened the letter, her hands trembling. It was dated months before the accident. It read, "If anything happens to me, know that I did what I could. There are things I cannot say, but if he ever comes back, protect him. Signed only, J." Her breath caught. It wasn't from her. It wasn't from a boy's father. It was from someone else entirely. Someone who knew before the accident ever happened. Someone who had been close enough to love Gabriel. Close enough to want to save him. And now, she needed to find out who Jay was. Because the story wasn't over. It had just changed direction. The woman spent days digging through the past. Photo albums, family records, letters once tucked away to avoid painful memories. The more she searched, the more she realized there had been someone missing from the narrative all along. Not in the photos, but behind them. In Gabriel's childhood pictures, there was always a man in the background. Not his father, not a relative, someone else, a family friend, a driver, a quiet man named Javier. She hadn't thought of him in years. He was soft-spoken, loyal, never asked for much. He had worked for the family when Gabriel was just a toddler. He would sing to him during long car rides, bring him small candies when no one was watching. And then he vanished, right before the accident. She pulled out a folder with old employment records and found it. Javier Soto, age 32 at the time. No emergency contact, no known address. But something clicked. She remembered now. After the accident, her husband had insisted on letting the staff go. All of them. Too many memories, he'd said. We need to start over. But maybe he was erasing something else. She hired a private investigator. It took 2 weeks. But finally, they found him. He was living in a modest home in a quiet village a few hours away. No phone listed. No social media. Just gone from the world. She went alone. No lawyers. No cameras. Just her and the weight of a mother's unanswered questions. When Javier opened the door, his face froze. He hadn't aged much, but his eyes, they told stories of guilt and years spent in silence. She didn't say a word. She just held up the letter. He stepped back, breath catching. "I never meant for it to happen that way," he whispered. "I thought I was doing what was right." Tears filled her eyes. "Why didn't you come back?" He looked down. "Because I was scared. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. But I saw the crash. I jumped in. I pulled him out. He wasn't breathing, then he was. And when I looked up, your husband was there, watching. He paused. He told me to walk away, that it would be better for all of you, that the boy wouldn't survive, that the press, the drama, would destroy the family. He gave me money, told me to disappear. And you listened, she said, voice breaking. I didn't want to, he said, but I was nobody, just a driver. Who would have believed me? I thought if I left him at the shelter, maybe fate would take care of him. She stepped forward. You saved him. He looked at her, tears forming. You raised him. That's what matters. She nodded slowly, then held out a photo of Gabriel, older now, smiling again. He remembers you. Javier broke. His knees buckled as he fell into the chair, weeping silently. She left the photo on the table, and as she walked away, she whispered, "You didn't vanish. You became part of the story. Thank you." Back in the city, Gabriel was waiting at the window when she returned. "Did you find him?" he asked. She nodded. "He saved you." Gabriel stared out at the sky. "I knew someone did." She knelt beside him. "You were never forgotten, Gabriel. You were fought for, even when you didn't know it." He smiled gently, and for the first time, he looked like a child again. Free. A few months later, a new foundation was launched. The Gabriel Project, dedicated to helping lost and abandoned children find their way back home. And during the opening ceremony, standing beside his mother, Gabriel gave a short speech. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones who stay, but their choices leave a mark. I got lost once, but I was found, not just by someone with my blood, but by someone with my heart. The crowd stood in silence, then erupted in applause. The boy once left behind had become a light for others, and the woman who lost everything had become everything he needed, not through revenge, but through love, the kind that doesn't need permission to exist, the kind that finds its way back, no matter how deep the river, no matter how many years have passed. And maybe this story isn't just about a boy who was lost and found. Maybe it's about you too, because sometimes life pulls us into darkness, makes us feel forgotten, abandoned, invisible. But like Gabriel, we must remember, even in silence, God sees us. Even when the world turns its back, he doesn't. And the people meant to find you will. Not always when you expect, but always when it matters. If this story touched your heart, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one, because some stories were made to find you right when you need them most. And tell us in the comments, from which city or country are you watching this? We want to know where our stories are reaching hearts across the world. Until next time, may you be seen, may you be remembered, and above all, may you be loved.